Bing bong. I'm back with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast. But a little programming note, I was supposed to have Samson Mao on the podcast today. He's a little sick, so I'm going to have him on Tuesday of next week. I'm going to have a two-parter next week with two big guests, so stay tuned. But in the meantime, I have Justin, who is just working in the energy field overall, very knowledgeable about Bitcoin mining. I had him live in person on the podcast when he was in Tampa for this Sound Money, Sound Food event. So we had a great conversation all about mining, just kind of like the overall industry. SEC regulations were just kind of starting at that time. So we kind of dive into that, some of the tea leaves and everything else. But first, big shout out to my sponsors, Pleb Lab. So if you haven't been to Pleb Lab and you're going to Austin sometime soon, you need to check it out. You just need to go in there. It's the best hacker space in the business. All the plebs, the plebeians, they're all hanging out in there, doing great stuff, building some excellent projects. Get yourself a Nomad pass. It's $100 a month. You can go into whenever you want. You get access to all the private events. And during BitBlock Boom, they're going to have a lot of private events, a lot of stuff going on. So come in the week a little bit before and come hop in Pleb Lab. It'll definitely be worth the money. I promise you that. And if you're going to BitBlock Boom, use promo code Green Candle for 10% off your entire purchase. That's right. I will be there. I'll be doing a lot of man on the street videos. You saw them during the Canadian Bitcoin conference. So come find me, come say hi, and go to BitBlock Boom. There's going to have an amazing lineup of speakers. Jack Mallers is always there. A lot of the big names, a lot of the big people that you want to see. It's more intimate than Miami. You get to, interact with a lot of people. You see Odell walking around. Marty Bent's going to be around. A lot of the people that are in Austin. So be sure to check that out and use promo code Green Candle to save 10% on your entire order. Now, let's get into the show with Justin. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, this is not financial advice. Everything you hear in this podcast, strictly the opinion of Justin and myself. Now let's go. Whoosh. What's up, everybody? We're live here with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast, where I got my buddy Justin, who's in town for the Sound Money, Sound Food, I guess, what are we calling it? Like a festival event? I don't know. For here,
dinner party.
Yeah, dinner party. I don't know, here at Bitcoin Bay. So Justin, how you doing today?
Great. Yeah, it was an awesome time last night. Glad I came, and super cool seeing what you guys are up to down here.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Wes and all the guys down here, they're really grinding away. So, but for those who don't know yet, why don't you give us a little bit about your background and why you came down here to Tampa for all this, man?
Yeah, well, I've never been to Tampa before, and I'd always wanted to be, and I wanted to come, and this just seemed like a great opportunity to support a local meetup, doing really great work, meet you guys in person. That's always great. I think it's really important for Bitcoiners to get out there and meet each other in real life, whether it's a conference or a meetup. And so all those kind of came together. I was already on the road traveling, so I figured why not come down, support you guys, meet you guys, and Tampa's beautiful this time of year. So really excited about that. My background is in electric utility industry. I was focused on renewable integration, new technology integration, electrification of transportation. So all the new technologies coming on the grid that customers are adopting and trying to integrate them onto the grid to maintain reliability and to make sure everyone's paying their fair share and all that. And then started looking at Bitcoin mining, recognizing how powerful of a resource it was in terms of demand response from a customer perspective. And from there, it's just been really trying to educate the utilities on how Bitcoin mining as a technology, as an industry, really can do a lot of the heavy lifting of what they've been trying to accomplish. I mean, that's what I was focused on, was like, how can we engage customers to manage their smart thermostats so on the hottest days or the coldest days of the year, we can tell them to maybe turn off their heat or turn off their air conditioning and to maintain reliability on the system, which in retrospect seems kind of crazy. It doesn't, and who wants to do that? Or maybe they can't charge their electric car, which is also probably a bad idea. And instead, what we can do is we can use Bitcoin mining to fill in the gaps. Bitcoin mining doesn't really care if it shuts off at 6 a.m. in January on the coldest day of the year, or 7 p.m. in July on one of the hottest days of the year. And they don't mind if they're shut off for half an hour or 4 hours or even a whole weekend. I mean, obviously they have business models, but operating within those parameters is well within their business models. And so that's been my focus. And now I've left the electric utility industry and I'm working now with Standard Power, commercial director, focused on building out one of the largest Bitcoin mining campuses in Conesville, Ohio. Ohio is a great state to mine. Texas is cool, but Ohio is even cooler in terms of temperature. No dust, great political environment. They've got competitive electric rates. And so really excited to be focused there. And then just seeing, the last aspect I'd touch on is, we're doing these large scale industry build outs, Standard Power, but other miners as well in rural America, where industry maybe what used to be there, but now it's gone. Maybe it's been gone for 20 years, 5 years, doesn't matter. It hasn't come back. Bitcoin mining is the one unique technology and industry that can show up and provide industry back to these rural communities, provide tax base, provide hope. And so that's a whole nother aspect of what's happening right now. That's just really exciting for me. So that's my day job now. And then, being a Bitcoiner and meeting guys like you is the icing on the cake.
Yeah, man, that's awesome stuff. But let's rewind it a little bit, because you were in the the energy space and everything like that. And then it seems like you found Bitcoin some way, shape, or form, and kind of related it to mining, but and like the energy distribution, all that kind of stuff. But tell us the orange pill story, man. How did you find it? Was it something that, I don't know, your background in the energy kind of aspect did it, or was it something you're like, hey, inflation's kicking my ass, so I gotta figure out a way to make some more money, or what?
Yeah, no, I wasn't quite that enlightened. So just real quick, I was renting out my guest house in Tucson, Arizona back in 2013 to a psychology PhD running experiments on undergrads that were depressed. And at some point, he tried to explain to me how he was mining Bitcoin in my guest house. And, as the story goes for all of us, right, we wish we had paid more attention. But, fast forward, a friend taps you on the shoulder here and there. And then finally in 2020, Thanksgiving timeframe, I was like, all right, this guy has tapped me on the shoulder one more time. I'm tired of having my story be, well, I don't know about it. And then 5 years later, I still don't know about it. So I promised myself in 5 years, I'm going to have a different story. Then I still don't know what's going on. So I bought a little bit. And then, of course, I did the shitcoin thing too. We've all done it, I suppose. And so that was Thanksgiving timeframe, just getting, personal. I got some extra money. Let's see what's going on here. And then it wasn't too long after, I think, January of 2021, I was listening to the Orange Pill podcast with Max and Stacy, and they were talking about Bitcoin mining, being able to go out to the oil wells and capture the stranded methane. And I started to think of all the interconnection backlogs that we had with our utility scale solar in North Carolina. And I knew about it in other places too, whether it was negative pricing with solar and wind. And in my, and I know a lot of this, it wasn't unique, but in my mind, it clicked like, okay, these are also examples of stranded energy, right? Like that 80 megawatt solar farm that wants to interconnect but can't because of limits on transmission and distribution. That is a version of stranded energy, and Bitcoin mining can almost certainly show up there and solve that problem as well. And so that's when it started to really click for me in terms of the mining as a grid resource. And then just, I went and because of my job at the utility, I could pull up customer load data, and I pulled up one of our mining customers, one of our larger ones on the grid, and had them show me what they could do demand response wise, and saw what they were doing, and just was like, holy cow, this is, if we could design a customer to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, this is it. And so that's when I really started to incorporate my exploration of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining in my day job. And they kind of went hand in hand from there. And so I think, just to tie it up, for me, it was maybe a lot, maybe I had a quicker sort of conviction. I just became, okay, Bitcoin's real. I'm starting to understand it. Maybe not quite, but like the Bitcoin mining industry, seeing the infrastructure that's being built out, seeing the millions of dollars of electricity being used, and just recognizing how large and real the industry was, it was very easy for me to recognize that Bitcoin wasn't going anywhere. It was very real, and it had all this potential, all this promise, even from a physics and an economics perspective on the electric grid. Not to mention, separating money from state, providing property rights to the global south and everyone on the globe, having instantaneous settlement anywhere in the world as a bearer instrument. Just all those things crashed together, and haven't looked back.
Yeah, I mean, that's great stuff. But I think everybody kind of has their way into Bitcoin, and whether it's, I don't know, through remittance payments, maybe they have some relatives in another country and they've always kind of struggled with that, so that strikes a nerve with them. Or it's like you with the energy aspect of things, like they have a career in energy, they say like, hey, at the very least this could help like balance a grid and help with that. Then it kind of strikes the nerve, and then you dig a little bit deeper. So I think it's like really interesting that you found it that way, and you had somebody in your guest house, even mining for themselves.
I'd love to know what island he owns.
Yeah, I know exactly.
He's not the type of person that would have lost his keys.
Yeah,
he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. But
can I just add one thing to that too? Because it wasn't necessarily why I found Bitcoin, but back in the great financial crisis, 2007, 2008, I was actually just getting started as a hippie, like mining or installing rooftop solar. And, I remember telling the owner of the company, I was like, I just want to see it all collapse. Like I had this huge aversion. I didn't want to participate at all in the stock market. I didn't want to participate at all. Like I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know why it was wrong. I certainly didn't recognize what a solution might be. But yeah, that was always something for me, and I regret it. I missed out on the entire like Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Netflix, stock, and I missed out on the first 10 years of Bitcoin too, or most of them. So in retrospect, now I recognize that all that angst and aversion that I had to what I just considered, Wall Street, really was just, I knew there was something wrong with the system in general, and I didn't like it. And now I recognize, okay, what was wrong was the money. This is why I didn't like it. I was right to not like it, but I just didn't recognize exactly what it was. And now it's crystal clear to me. And obviously you take it one step further. You say, well, what's the solution? Obviously the solution is Bitcoin. And so I feel like I'm kind of coming at peace with myself finally, because I never solved that. Like things just got better. The crisis ended, whatever, and things just sort of moved along. But now I'm so excited to have put all those pieces together just into one nice little orange package.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too that the guy that was mining Bitcoin was kind of, I guess, researching depressed kids, because I think a lot
Hopefully he was trying to orange pill them too.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, but I think you have a very similar story to a lot of people where they understand something's wrong, right? I mean, I feel like, especially our generation here, it's like the hustle economy, the gig economy has kind of been a big thing where people are like, you know what, I'm going to go to my 9 to 5, then I'm going to drive Uber. And like now inflation is so bad, they're having to do that to survive. So they hate their job. They have no loyalty. And people are like, why are all these kids jumping from job to job to job to make, $10,000 or $15,000 more, where the growth trajectory.
They have to.
Yeah. And it's out of need, right? Because inflation is so crazy, and, our purchasing power is just getting devalued. And I mean, if you
the earning power, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't hear that a lot. The purchasing power implies that you've got the dollars in your pocket or your bank account. Your earning power, though, is the other side of the equation. That's where the dollars come from in the first place. And when you have a salary that's fixed, that also is being like down and to the right with inflation.
Yeah.
It's just you don't have them yet, but.
Yeah, and prices of things change like daily or weekly or whatever. We've heard about the eggs, we've heard about gas, everybody's kind of taking that into account, but your salary is the same for like the entire year, unless you're like,
at least.
Yeah. And like usually these companies too are, it's like, all right, 3% raise, and then it's, it's kind of like a difficult position that you're in. And I feel like that's kind of a big reason why people are, just mentally, you see like the depression rates kind of up, right? I mean, like psychologists are probably making a fucking killing right now.
Not to mention they're being pumped full of poison.
Yeah, right? Exactly, right? I mean, yeah, we were just at the Sound Money, Sound Food thing. Right. So, I mean, like the whole entire food industry is fucked. And then on top of that, you're getting more expensive food for less nutrition. And then your money just doesn't go as far as it possibly can. So you're going to be working, you got to stay at home more often. You're not going to be able to go out and socialize. So I think like, just all to wrap it up, like money obviously touches so many different aspects, which is a crazy thing about, once you see it and you understand like, holy shit, this is what has been wrong with the world for so long. But you're always wondering like, why, like, I feel like you don't really have that light bulb moment until you see Bitcoin, because that's just been the status quo that you've known for 20 something odd years while you were growing up, and then, or maybe if you're lucky enough, you find Bitcoin when you're in your teenage years or something like that. But, I think now people just don't really understand, where Bitcoin or what Bitcoin is, one, and like what is wrong with the world. And they want to kind of ignore it because of the volatility. They're seeing things like, FTX, BlockFi, Binance, like all, you name it. And then there's also like kind of some negative connotations when it comes to the government, which is what I want to jump into next. Obviously we have, Janet Yellen, all these other politicians kind of coming out. But the one I want to dive into you about is like that Texas bill. Luckily, it didn't get passed, but they were essentially trying to limit the amount of Bitcoin miners that we had, stabilizing the grid and everything else. So why do you think that there's like that, I guess, negative connotation when it comes to Bitcoin mining when, you as an energy guy, I mean, it seems like it's obvious to me as just like an outside guy that, just, I guess it's just observing the grid. Like, sure, I have an engineering background, but I'm not in the, energy field and got my hands deep in it like you. So why do you think that there's like politicians attempting to fight the mining stabilizations of grids and those kind of things as well?
Yeah. Why? That's a great question. Especially if you look back, even though as recent as this past Christmas, with the winter storm that blanketed most of the continental U.S., you saw what was almost certainly the largest demand response event from a single industry at a single time. Some of it coordinated, some of it uncoordinated, with Bitcoin mining shutting off anywhere from 1.5 gigawatts, maybe even up to 1.8, but a very significant amount shut off in Texas for exactly when they needed it most. It was almost certainly a huge part of them maintaining reliability and not having blackouts. I could pretty much guarantee that if that 1.5 gigawatts plus didn't shut off in Texas, and then stay off a lot of it for most of the weekend, they wouldn't have been as successful. And the reason I have so much confidence is because other states, like my state, North Carolina, we only had a couple hundred megawatts of Bitcoin mining to shut off, and that wasn't enough, and we ended up having historic blackouts for the first time in their 100-year history. Duke Energy had to shut down people's power on Christmas when they're opening their presents on the coldest day of the year. And so you just say, okay, well, I also know that if Duke Energy had 500 megawatts more of Bitcoin mining, or 500 to a gigawatt more of Bitcoin mining on the system, that would have shut down just like it did in Texas, North Carolina would have also been able to avoid blackouts. It's just the dynamics of what was going on at the time. And so you just see how real it is, how beneficial it is. And so then you have to ask yourself, okay, why? Why was there this legislation in a seemingly very pro-Bitcoin mining state like Texas coming out of nowhere with a lot of political support to artificially and arbitrarily limit Bitcoin mining's ability to participate and provide these services, these balancing services back to the grid? And what you're left with is Well, that was a market. That was a competitive market providing these services to the grid in Texas. And that existed well before Bitcoin mining did. And, who was providing those services? Well, it was a lot of natural gas peaker plants that were providing these services back to the grid. So you'd build billions of dollars worth of peaker plants, and then you'd have them just sitting there on standby, waiting for ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, to signal them to ramp up when they needed the extra energy. And then so it was probably a pretty good business. But you can probably tell where the story's going. Bitcoin mining shows up, says, oh, yeah, that's interesting. We can do that a lot quicker, a lot better, a lot faster for longer, and for less. And so as far as I've been told, basically the floor in that market, the price just, collapsed. Like Bitcoin mining basically drank their milkshake of providing ancillary services back to the grid. And we're talking about, like maybe Berkshire Hathaway, maybe these other very large players. Carlos Slim owns the natural gas pipelines. There's a lot of dynamics into those pipelines. They go down into Mexico. They're coming out of Western Texas. And, there's it's hard to explain quickly. There's an article, Level 39 on Twitter, has great research into this. I helped them with this. There's an article in Bitcoin Mining Magazine. Maybe we can link it to your show notes.
Yeah, for sure.
But he goes through this, and what you see is that basically, long story short, Bitcoin mining came in and totally wiped out their market in all the right ways. Like they were providing more value to all the grids, all the ratepayers, the grid participants in Texas for less, right? Yeah. And that's what everybody wants. In a competitive market, the one that can provide the service the best and for the least, they should win. Well, that's why these guys couldn't have it. And it just so happens the owner of these pipelines, whose prices and revenues are also affected by the price of gas, which is affected by how much peaker plants are used or not.
Yeah.
He happens to be Carlos Slim, one of the richest people in the world, right? Hey, Carlos, how's it going? And he, just happens to be one of the largest private shareholders of the New York Times. Interesting. So when this legislation gets pushed into Texas, expedited, like they go out of their way to make sure it can pass as quickly as possible. They clear the ways with procedural tactics, which you can get into in the article. Guess what happens at the same time this legislation is being pushed in Texas?
A giant negative article on New York Times is pushed out, huh?
About Bitcoin mining in Texas and how bad it is for the state and this and that. So, that's all just conjecture. I don't know. I haven't talked to Carlos. I'm sure he would never do anything like that. And I'm sure the New York Times is well, their integrity would not allow for them to participate in something like that. But at the end of the day, the good news is that the bill died. It's no more. We will not have artificial caps on the ability of Bitcoin mining to participate in these competitive markets. Like that's the whole point of Texas. It's deregulated. It's supposed to be a competitive energy marketplace. That's why the energy is so cheap most of the time. And so, I think what we're going to continue to see is Bitcoin mining show up and provide resiliency to the grid in all the best ways possible. And, like I was alluding to earlier with the fact that maybe you don't need to control people's thermostats anymore. Maybe you don't need to control when they can charge their cars anymore because you have Bitcoin mining. Maybe we don't need gas peaker power plants anymore. Sorry, Warren. You might want to maybe invest more in Coca-Cola or something. But, that's really what we saw. And so that got quashed. That's good to see. And then, you saw the 30% tax proposal on electricity use come out of the White House. That one got smacked in the face and killed really quickly. That was good to see. That actually the opposition came from a friend of ours, a congressman in Ohio, Warren Davidson. You should throw him some support. His political capital is our support. He was the one that led the charge during the debt ceiling negotiations to eliminate that 30% tax on miners, which would have been a death sentence for any type of on-grid, non-guerrilla, non-black market mining. They would have been gone. And so it was great to see someone, a congressman from Ohio, lead the opposition to that. and have it. I mean, we really didn't hear a whole lot of conversation about the fight because I think they just did such a good job. Whatever coalition he organized just marched straight up to probably Kevin McCarthy's office and maybe Elizabeth Warren and maybe even Biden himself and said, no, like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of positive tailwinds right now with Bitcoin mining. And it's really exciting to see. And I think the opponents of it, including the New York Times, including Elizabeth Warren, if they keep it up, they're just gonna wear themselves out, and they're gonna look foolish. And the proof is in the pudding. You're gonna see Bitcoin mining start to bring back these rural communities all across America, providing reliability to the grid. I mean, just like bop. It's just endless. All the positives of Bitcoin mining, and it's unstoppable. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's great stuff. And I love that rant too. I mean,
is that a rant? Sorry, guys.
no, man. No, that's what these are for, though, right? I mean, like, I want to kind of stay on like the political aspect of things because it seems like you have great insight on that. Last year, it seemed like 2022, that was like kind of the year for politicians to, I guess, somewhat make a name for themselves on Twitter, going on to Bitcoin Twitter spaces and kind of saying like, hey, I'm pro Bitcoin. But you could always like kind of fish out some of the, I guess, real Bitcoin believers and then, people who are just there kind of grifting. But I mean, we just had Bitcoin Miami, right? We had Robert Kennedy Jr. and then Vivek. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but two presidential candidates come up and speak at that
opposite parties.
Yeah, opposite parties. And
an independent with Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah. And I mean, so it's like Republican, Democratic, and independent, right? So we have political candidates in all different parties. And, it seemed like Ron DeSantis even got on an Elon Musk Twitter space and mentioned Bitcoin. You can do Bitcoin, right?
I mean,
Bitcoin. I like him a lot too. I'm a Florida guy, right? So, but I mean, regardless, it seems like that's going to be a new, I guess, talking point when it comes to debates. It's going to be on the ballot, whether it's going to be, 1 out of 4 candidates or 1 out of 20 or even 1 out of 2. I don't really know how the next year and a half-ish is going to play out, but definitely seems like that's going to be a talking point and it's going to create a divide, right? So how are you going to look at, I guess, a candidate, whether it's, Bitcoin positive, Bitcoin negative, and just like in general, I mean, you don't have to tell us whether you vote one way or the other, but it seems like they're going to try to create like almost like make Bitcoiners a one issue kind of voter. And that's the one thing that kind of worries me going forward. It's like, all right, obviously Bitcoin's like the solution for a lot of the problems, but if they want to give us Bitcoin, but then potentially like all these other, policies that they have are like more controlling, I feel like that's kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, so to speak. So I guess in your eyes, what's I guess the way you're looking at these new these politicians starting to get into, I guess, the Bitcoin sphere, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I think, and that's a big topic. That's fun. That's a whole nother rant.
Yeah.
No, I think first and foremost, when you have a politician of any stripe speak intelligently and seemingly passionately about Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining, it undoubtedly has to be a good thing, right? Because whether they believe it or not, getting that message out to people that wouldn't normally be exposed to Bitcoin content, having it come from a politician, that to me can't be anything but positive. Now, I think that it will be important. It's got to be important for people that are voting, that if Bitcoin should be, it's going to be high on my list. Like, I feel as though I could never bring myself to vote for a candidate that's anti-Bitcoin. Or if it's between a candidate that doesn't have a position and a candidate that does, clearly I'm going to be a lot more interested in a candidate that has something intelligent and interesting to say about Bitcoin from a positive perspective. I think the good news here is that we can make Bitcoin be single issue voters, but we're not necessarily locking them into one particular political ideology, right? Like, you want to be a single issue Bitcoin voter from a Democratic perspective, boom, you got RFK Jr. You're more of an independent, kind of quasi-libertarian, what have you, boom, you got Tulsi Gabbard. You're more of a Republican bent, but you're a Bitcoin voter, boom, you've got someone like Ron DeSantis. So, I think it's really important. People should definitely not overlook if a candidate has something, certainly they have something negative to say about Bitcoin. I would have a hard time finding myself to vote for anybody that has anything negative to say about Bitcoin, regardless of the rest of their policies. And then I would say here, kind of getting back to what you're saying about is Bitcoin maybe like the Trojan horse or the wolf in sheep's clothing to bring in these other negative policies. That could be one way to look at it. I think that that concern, though, to me doesn't seem worth overshadowing maybe what I was just talking about previously, because I would actually say it's probably more reverse. Like if they legitimately bring Bitcoin into the political sphere, into their policies, and into the country as a whole, maybe there's some other policies that they also bring in. It's hard to imagine that person's promoting a CBDC. So I think we can almost just by definition take that off the table. But even if they have like abortion issues or gun issues or welfare issues or renewable energy issues, whatever side you're on, if that's coming along with them, then I think, okay, to me, I'd be willing to deal with that because I think that's more short-lived. The Bitcoin, when they bring that in, the Bitcoin's almost certainly going to take root and stay and get its tentacles out into everything. And that, by definition, will start to curtail all the other stuff. I mean, that's how I understand Bitcoin, right? You separate the money from state. You separate the state's ability to indefinitely fund itself and expand itself from it. And now it's just going to start to shrink. So, for example, the conversation about El Salvador, right? Like, is Bukele a dictator? Is it a net negative that he's in this position that he is? I personally don't. I'm just saying what people say. I don't. But the fact of the matter is, regardless of how you feel about Bukele, with Bitcoin coming in, he's given Bitcoin to the people. As far as I can tell, it seems to be legitimate. And at some point, if he becomes, maybe let's just say he's a malevolent dictator right now, like he's the good guy doing everything right, but maybe he puts things in place to where his son or his wife or whoever comes into power later and they're not as great as he was, blah blah blah. The people already have the Bitcoin.
Yeah,
you'll never be able to take that. I mean, and what can we do with Bitcoin? Well, yeah, you can vote for a Bitcoin candidate, but then you vote with your wallet and then you can vote with your feet. And so at the end of the day, if a candidate of any persuasion is empowering their people or the people of their jurisdiction or their country or their state with Bitcoin, even if things go sideways with that person or that politician, which maybe undoubtedly they will, who knows? You've got the Bitcoin, right? And that's where we're at right now anyway. So it's just about expanding the tent, bringing more people in, and I think that all net, it's a huge positive. Couldn't be more excited. And then with RFK Jr. to have his release, his presidential announcing his presidential candidacy at Bitcoin Miami. I mean, that's huge. And hopefully there'll be some debates between him and Biden and whoever else. We can only hope. That'd be great because obviously Bitcoin is going to be a huge issue for him, it seems. And then hopefully Ron DeSantis. There's going to be debates on the Republican side. So very excited to see Ron DeSantis and other candidates distinguish themselves from the rest of the stage with something like Bitcoin. That's going to be a very, very powerful message.
Yeah, 100%. And, like I said, I think like there's definitely going to be some sort of aspect or some sort of discussion around Bitcoin when it comes to a lot of these debates, right? Whether it's, hey, I don't even know what that is, or it's like, we got RFK going up there and like, giving that great speech that he did at Bitcoin Miami. I think that was probably one of the more talked about speeches that I heard.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. When it came to the conference. So, I mean, overall, I just think, like it's going to be a talking point and it's something for Bitcoiners to kind of look out for. But, whether a political candidate is talking about Bitcoin one way, shape, or the other, I just want to like I don't know. And for me, I'm
everything's good for Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, but I also think like you also shouldn't like jump forward and be like, this is the best thing ever, because I don't really trust politicians like,
no, that's important.
In myself. So I don't know. I mean, I like you see like Texas, for example, right? We just talked about the Bitcoin mining bill and how that like Texas seemingly was very pro Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden this bill tries to get snuck through. And then it's like, what the hell is going on? I mean, I think you just always got to follow the incentives in a certain aspect. But I want to get back to Bitcoin mining specifically, because this has been a very interesting time where it's like kind of like the first bear market, that we've seen the hash rate kind of continually increase.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of miners get crushed when, the Bitcoin price fell to like $4,000 in the COVID crash. And then like after it was running up and got to 69 and now has come down to around 25K. We've seen a lot of miners who got over leveraged and, borrowed, whether it was against their mining machines or the Bitcoin that they mined, and, end up failing. So I think Bitcoin mining as a like industry is kind of in a unique state where the ones that have survived now have maybe provided some proved that they're resilient in some way, shape, or form, and are able to kind of position themselves well for the next bull run. But it's also hard to, I guess, project in a sense, like, are these miners going to FOMO in again? Like, are they going to think like, hey, this next bull run, we're going to get to 500K or, 420,000 because we hit 69 on the last one?
We better.
Yeah. I mean, if that happens, we're definitely in a simulation.
For sure.
That's what I got to get out and get it out there. I mean, if we go from 69 to 420, I mean, oh man. God. The memes would be incredible on Twitter. That would be, I don't know if I could get myself to get offline at that point. But in your eyes, how do you feel about, I guess, overall just general state of Bitcoin mining industry?
Yeah, well, just to emphasize what you
delay there, but we were getting basically ripping and rolling in the overall state of the Bitcoin mining industry. You were going into the politicians, don't trust, verify. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, so this current state of play with mining, you're right. Hash rate, it continues to touch all-time highs. It's been on a tear, basically since the China ban, almost 2 years ago now. I think it dropped down to like, maybe around, it went from like 160 exahash down to 90 or 80 or something, basically cut in half. And then now it's been just on a steady trajectory upwards, and it's always an estimate. You never know for sure. There's no like actual ticker that tracks everything, but estimated to be right around 360. Well, let me pull it up real quick. But, basically at all-time highs. And let me see here real quick. Time chain calendar is a great place to find real-time stats. Yeah, 371 is the estimated exahash right now for the global network. So getting close to 400 here, which is just crazy to think of even a year ago. But yeah, I think you're right. The miners that you see now in the industry have proved resiliency, were well capitalized with smart capital, and weren't over levered. Some did YOLO in, like Celsius, go figure, right?
Yeah.
So just for example, you had companies taking out leverage on miners or other leverage to get miners at $110 a terahash or so, which at the time made sense because you were getting 65 cents a kilowatt hour for your Bitcoin going through the miner. Well, then things changed, and now that same miner is probably worth like $15 a terahash, and you're getting 12 cents a kilowatt hour for your going through the ASIC, and it was even lower when Bitcoin was below 20. And so the I think it has strengthened the industry right now. The people that are left were doing all the right things the right way, and I think are pretty stable now. You're probably not going to see a whole lot more capitulation in the mining industry unless we see a huge drawdown in price. Bitcoin goes to 15K or 10K again for a month or two. That could put a lot of stress on some people, but I still think the ones that are here now could probably weather that storm. But now you have people also getting into the market, and they're getting in, building in the bear market. And I'm a firm believer in that. And so whether you're a home miner that you want to add to your stack of ASICs, now's a great time, or you're a small business miner, or even the large scale ones, they're getting in now. and they're getting those ASICs, the same ones that were $110 a terahash a year and a half ago are now, you can get them for under $20 a terahash. And, the real issue you're going to have is finding capacity. Where are you going to plug these things in? And cheap energy. A lot of those spots, the reason these miners survived is because they had good spots, they had good energy contracts, and they had reliable energy. And so, we've got 1.2 gigawatts available in Ohio. So if you have 20 megawatts of capital that you want to deploy, Ohio's a great spot. My DMs are open. But we're going to see that. And then I think just more broadly, what it speaks to is undoubtedly, what did Russia start doing with the gas once Nord Stream got blown up? Well, they're probably mining it in Siberia. We heard Bhutan is building out. They've been doing it for a while now, but they're expanding their operations with mining from hydro. Paraguay is getting into hydro. Tons of places in South America. You have El Salvador, probably North Korea. I mean, everywhere. I think you're starting to see nation states, Iran. They're undoubtedly mining Bitcoin as well. Or you've heard about the Gulf states, UAE, or just announced, I think it was them. It was one of the Gulf states. They're going to be doing a 500 megawatt immersion project. That's huge. We just powered up at our facility 50 megawatts of immersion. It's coming online this month. It's the first out of the 1.2 gigawatts. That's the biggest in the country that I've heard of. I could be wrong, but if it's not, it's up there. And then UAE or whoever's doing 500 megawatts of immersion. Just how cool is that? But yeah, the hash rate is not going to stop. It's going to keep going. So hopefully there's a corresponding rise in Bitcoin price or transaction fees to pump my bags with the JPEGs, pump my fees.
Yeah.
But just don't scam people, I guess. I don't know if those can go hand in hand or not. But I don't see hash rate slowing down anytime soon. The projects I know of that are coming online, including our own, plus the nation state adoption, which is just obvious. Network's never been stronger, right? And I think maybe that's the main takeaway too. Is it's not just hash rate; it's wallets. Mm-hmm. It's wallets of any size. You see wallets with less than 0.1 Bitcoin are stacking just huge amounts on maybe the DCA army, right? You got wallets with 1 or more Bitcoin at all-time highs. I think we finally crested over 1 million. Mm-hmm. Everywhere, like Lightning nodes, Bitcoin nodes, everywhere you look, the network is just ultrasound.
yeah, there we go. And that's I think that's the understatement of the year. You can't emphasize that enough. Is that Bitcoin's been floating around to 20, 25, 30K, not
maybe
really
down to 15.
Yeah, maybe down to 15, but whatever, this 15 to 30K range. So it hasn't seen what has gotten the publicity on CNBC showing the charts, skyrocket, moon and whatever. People are not FOMOing in right now to Bitcoin, but you're seeing tremendous amounts of building, whether it's Lightning companies coming online, Bitcoin mining companies. I know of people that are, working on home mining, whether it's to utilize a water heater with Bitcoin miners.
I heated my home, my 3-story townhome in Charlotte all winter with 7 kilowatts of toasters in my garage.
There you go. Yeah, and then you lost all that in a boating accident.
I never had it.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know how to set up the wallet.
Yeah, exactly. But all this great building going on. So I'm going to wrap it up with one final question. Podcast is called State of Bitcoin. So in your eyes, what is the current state of Bitcoin?
Supreme. Yeah.
Supreme, the brand? Is that what we're gonna have the Bitcoin Supreme logo? Is that new?
I don't know.
New merch ideas or something?
A lot of words flew through my mind, and that's the one that came out of my mouth. No, I think that the state of Bitcoin right now is just everywhere you look, like what we were just saying. It's just proving itself to be what we all understood it to be and expected it to be. It's happening right in front of our eyes, and it's gonna separate money from state. It's gonna provide property rights to everyone on the globe that are unconfiscatable, and financial services that are necessary to people that have never had them before. And it's just sitting there in this incredibly strong, all-time high state that is untouchable. Maybe that's another word.
Yeah.
Supremely untouchable.
There we go.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, Justin. Well, thanks so much for joining me here today and coming into town for the Sound Money and Sound Food Festival here at Bitcoin Bay. So for those who don't know you or whatever, why don't you tell them where they can find you on Twitter and what all you got going on?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, got a Orkney5. I'm not too active. I do a lot of spaces, and I send out some tweets every now and then. I mostly troll Solar Bros to talk about nuclear energy. And then I'm on the Orange Pill app as well, so I like that. But yeah, my DMs are open. I love to make connections. Happy to answer any questions. Invite me to a space if you have it, and let's go. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks so much for coming on. And I'll put all that stuff in the show notes, so you guys be sure to check out Justin and the great things he's got going on. We're out.